reckon that's that.
Science.
Rise and shine, sleepyhead. It's a brand new day.
Good morning.
Good thing that I don't have dangerous brain powers, or right now you'd be in 1,000 little pieces.
Now prepare to experience the most outrageous man on radio.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
Okay.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale.
This is insane.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't believe that I missed. I just don't get this right. It's not as if that wasn't the world's longest, introduction. I forgot.
The only station that matters.
But I forgot the. Anyway, how you doing there? Today's a continuation of the discussion we've been having on the past three shows. And I won't waste an awful lot of time. I want to get into it. It's the title of the show is the humanity's dilemma for us AI androids. And why are they systematically removing humanities from our societies and cultures? Which is clear to anyone who's got their eyes wide open. And I just thought I'd plop up this little graphic that explains, people say, well, what do you mean by the humanities? And we're talking about philosophy, art, literature, and that also includes history and language. Okay, but now, of course, we know, it's 5:53 a.m. The sun's going to be rising soon. I had a horrible night of sleep. My cat's back being seriously ill the way he was, I don't know, several weeks ago before he was taken to the vet. So I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with him. He's hiding out in one of his favorite spots. I just took him up a hand, on a little plate, some fresh Alaskan salmon. Made for cats, intermixed with a capsule of something that's supposed to help his digestive system microbiome. I think that's where the problem lies, somewhere in there. I gave him a little mouth, shot of something that was supposed to, the vet had also had given him yesterday. But I think last night he. So that's my story.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
So I didn't sleep that well, even though I laid down to rest around 6 o'clock. It's hard to believe. But I was up. It rained too. So, we'll just do a real brief thing here just because people who are regular viewers of the show.
Weekend weather.
And I'm kind of curious myself. Like I say, I just jumped down here and turned everything on. So I'm curious what's going on. It's saying the weather app is saying that sunrise will be within probably the half hour. We'll see that on camera too, up there in the corner, as well as probably, I don't know, we might have missed the coal trucks or not. I never start a show this late. Like I said, I was up for most of the night. The first part of the night, I knew the cat was ill early on, and a friend came down and brought some of this cat food and some stuff to help out. But he was just, laying on the bed, pretty much lethargic. Anyway, then there was a drip, 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 drip on top of my head. So I wasn't going to. I just taken a shower and everything, and I was settling into bed. So I had to put on some stuff and go upstairs into the attic to try to find this leak. And I I mean, there was some water in the collection bins, and I have put towels in between them and under them and stuff. So, in other words, there shouldn't have been a drip, 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 but it sounded as if the drip was like below the like kind of the false floor that I have all these collection bins on that I created, and I can't imagine how anything could be getting there because the cloths and Dollar Tree rags weren't particularly, they might have some dampness to them, but nothing was wet. And I threw out a bucket worth of water from a series of collection containers on both sides of the room, but the one above me did not have a lot of water to begin with. Anyway, it's 34 degrees outside, and today it's calling for an 80% chance of snow, and all I see are snowflakes all the way across up through, into the morning. I can't see further than that. I don't want to go on the internet and run the risk of something happening. The high is going to be 46, so I imagine the snow would stop later this afternoon. The overnight's going to be 34, and then it's going to be hell week for me. It's thunderstorms and rain showers, warm weather, however, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, up through Thursday. That's the forecast. So 60s in the day and even 50s at night, which would be great. I could get a lot of work, get my cooler weather crops planted in the ground. It's almost like we've kind of crossed that line to where we'll just have the occasional, frost, warning or something like that. But if it's raining every day, and by the way, that pesky rat from the neighbor next door appears to have dug in under the concrete some kind of hole. I haven't examined it, but I saw it from my second floor window.
Weekend weather.
So that's that.
Hey, it's me. How you doing, man?
Well, like I said, not too good. It's like I said, between dealing with the weather, the leaks, the rodents in the backyard, and now a cat that's, I don't know if he's on it, if it's it. That's where I am. But, trying to be a trooper, I stayed up there with him as long as I can. There's nothing much I could do. His nose isn't cold, so he's probably running a fever. He's probably has some kind of infection. I don't know what to do. The vet's not open even. They don't have an emergency clinic here, so the earliest I could get him in is tomorrow morning. So I just have to hope he makes it through the day and night, and we could take him to the vet tomorrow, and they could do something to help him out. And I know that's a kind of a gloomy way to start things, Oh, no. Yeah, I know. It's sad. But, it's the struggle of life, and it's just the way life is, Life is filled with heartbreak and, disasters and all of this stuff. And it ties into today's show, and, not that I wanted it to, but it's part of this whole thing. Is who are these evil doers? Like, why is there? It's the age-old question, but why is there evil in the world? Pardon me for doing that. The legendary white handkerchief, just fresh out of the washer and dryer yesterday. Seems I've been doing laundry so many times. My other hat, my New York City hat, is like basically destroyed. I had to use a stapler to staple the Velcro part. I got to see if somebody has some, I don't know if it's a stitch witchery or some kind of tape that sticks to cloth. I'm not sure if Gorilla Tape does or not. But I mean, I won't be able to put that thing in the washer anymore, So it's a hat to wear on it's a New York hat to wear on occasion, or maybe it has to be retired to the bar as like, there's your New York Yankees hat. Your your souvenir of the several times that you lived and worked in New York City, you know. Anyway, that's me. That's that, and away we go. So the humanities, I think you've had time to see that, so you understand what we're talking about. And mainly, what we're talking about, I'm concerned with, is not something from a collegiate standpoint, from curriculum that may be taught in a humanities course overview, humanities 101 or something, where they mention language and history. But just really right down to it, art, literature, philosophy, and understanding art, the broad term there, which would include music, but it would include, we're talking serious music here. From my standpoint, I don't, the classical, the classical arts and classical music and classic literature, you see, and philosophy from the great philosophers, and history, not revised history, all right? History as we know it, right? The best we know it. History written down by historians, right? And basically, that it can be, and again, it's early in the morning. I just had a sip or two of coffee, so my mind is just starting to my bioelectric brain. You could see is not totally functioning. That has been confirmed by multiple sources is what I was searching for in my brain. History that has been confirmed by multiple sources, multiple historians. No, I'm not slurring my voice because I'm drunk or something. Like I said, I just woke up and I got a lot of stuff on my mind, but I want to get through this show because the show must go on, and it's an interesting discussion and that we've started here over the past 3 days. And I think this element is fits in with it. And somewhere along the line, I don't know if I will do this. I spent the day yesterday, a better part of the day, it was 40 degrees outside, freezing like an idiot, trying to shore up a fence to keep rodents out of my backyard because I don't have them. It's this woman hoarder who happens to live next door, who's oblivious to it, or I don't know. I have no idea what she's doing. So that came in. I just threw every piece of clothing I had on in the washer and went in and took the hottest shower I could withstand, and then realized that my cat was condition, which was in the morning not the greatest, had, deteriorated worse as the day progressed. So that was my day yesterday. So you understand what I'm talking when I talk about humanities. That's what I'm talking about. Serious humanities. Okay. And I'm sorry about the 15% off order there. If somehow that cheapens the show to you, it's part of what we do here is try to get the message across to people. All right. And I look for ways. I've thought long and hard about how to do that in a way that is the least intrusive, I should say. And what I found was that, a shirt basically is makes you a walking billboard, but at the same time, it's subtle. I mean, unless you're wearing a fluorescent shirt with, that says something, that says like F you on it or something. I mean, you know what I mean? But generally speaking, a shirt like, this one here, Then What, where I just took the 15% off thing from, which is 15% off that hoodie, or that's available as a shirt. But that's it's just a hoodie, it's just a shirt, and it says then what, and it's thought provoking. It's like game over. It's like, what does that mean? And so someone might look at it and think it's just, a gamer might want to wear the shirt, right? Someone else it could say game over. What are you talking about? And that's the whole idea. And it's the same with, like I have over here, you don't know what you don't know, which is probably the most important phrase. And then above me, everything you know is wrong. And those are the two things that are really coming out of these shows. And those are the primary shirts, and they're available in all kinds of stuff. Anyway, this place that I deal with, I only make like 50 cents or something. It's not like a moneymaker thing. I'm not monetized on YouTube, okay? No one has donated a dime. There's a PayPal link down below. Nobody's donated a dime to this. Like I said, I had a friend bring down cat food for my sick cat. And I still do this show. All right? So anyway, and the same with Great Solar stuff. I wanted something that, when I talk about the power grid being in such disrepair and how it's not, we no longer are at a point where the power grid can be repaired. We're beyond that point. It's the same with the bridges, and infrastructure in the U.S. In other words, we have this reactive approach to the infrastructure. No matter what you hear a politician or somebody like that say, that's just political nonsense. Okay. That's that old classic hypocrisy, hypocrisy for profit, or profit also meaning vote for me and I'll set you free. But they're all marionettes, and, the media and politicians are marionettes. They're all puppets, and people who get caught up in that, they're puppets. The question is, I talk about a corporatocracy, but it's beyond the corporatocracy, as we've uncovered. And this is a learning experience for me too, these shows. Right? Because we're delving deeper into it. And I realize there are people involved in this corporatocracy, big tech, big ag, big media, the Fed, military contractors, the Wall Street. There are people in there that are just kind of in it because that's our society, right? It's our culture. And so they're just trying to get along, get away, do something in life. There are people who are genuinely nice human beings. There are people that are not struggling as much as some of us. There are people that do wondrous things. They're just downright good people, good, happy people, and all of that. So it's not like I'm trying to paint a picture of complete doom and gloom here. What I'm saying is that we seem to be on a trajectory. And there's a signpost ahead, like Rod Serling used to say, and that it's dystopia ahead. And that's what I'm trying to get at. And so that's what I'm dealing with these shows, and this hypothesis of mine that I've developed over the past, or presented over the past 3 days, and and then asking these questions, right? And so I create these things that will help you out. So when I talk about the infrastructure failing, I've created a website. Again, I don't own the companies. I just am doing an affiliate thing through like Amazon or something. But if you go there, these are items that I have personally tested that will help you if the power goes out, right? For example. And these are things that people need to think about, right? And so it's not about prepping and MREs and all that stuff. We've talked about those. You go back to my shows, and I deal with all kinds of issues. I'm trying to be rational, reasonable, down-to-earth, common sense approach to the state of, the United States, the fallen United States, and fallen Western civilization. And we have to the first step is to accept that. And some people they still can't accept it, and they're still thinking, oh, we're going to save America, or we're going to build back better, and we're going to build the infrastructure. And they have no comprehension of the task that would, and what it would take to do it. In other words, if they would have started in the 1980s, yes, we would be living in the future. And the year 2022 would be like something out of one of those 1960s World's Fairs. The future, right? But we didn't. Instead, the 30-somethings then, who were the hippies who turned to yuppies, they decided to go a different route, a materialistic route of just what you would call creature comforts. And that was the focus. Easy credit, bigger houses, bigger cars, and fill those houses with all kinds of things, right? And their technology was focused on certain communications mediums and diversionary communications, entertainment type of things, instead of focusing on people's quality of life. And you may say, I don't know, I've seen some of those mansions. That's quite the quality of life those people have. Well, maybe there are billionaires in this world that have a good quality of life. And, but what I'm talking about is in America, 40,000 people a week are dying of things that are heart-related, type 2 diabetes, obesity-related, kidney problems, things of that nature. These are all preventable things, and we've done nothing about that. And this is, so 40,000 people a week. There's no current, that war or whatever you want to call it, incursion that's going on in east of Europe. See, it's a thing. It's not even about Europe or NATO, right? But I mean, they're not losing 40,000 a week. We are losing 40,000 a week. We have 2,000 murders a week, according to crime statistics, on average here in the U.S. And they go unsolved, the lion's share of them. So you see what I'm trying to say? We haven't focused on that. And that brings us to this title on this dark title card I have here on the screen. So who are the evildoers? And if you're, old enough to remember that George W., using the word evildoers, it's like, no, I don't mean that. Okay. But I've chosen that, I guess, for two reasons. Because one, that, it is dealing with something that you've heard before, and that how the hypocrisy of these people, how they scapegoat individuals as the evildoers. But the type of evil, the magnitude of evil that I'm talking about, transcends some of the most horrific things that you can even think about. And one of them is the idea that since he first spake those words, some 20 years ago, we've lost here in the U.S., on an annualized basis, maybe 50 million Americans died unnecessarily, preventably. 50 million. So who are the real evildoers? You could take all those endless wars, that we had at the same time, post 9/11, and talk about American deaths, all right? and yet, and that doesn't even, it doesn't come close. We weren't losing millions. You see what I'm saying? We were losing in the tens of thousands of people and horrific, near mortal injuries to even a greater number, not to mention the horror and misery that it brought to the soldiers and their families. But here at the home front, what people don't understand is while that was going on, that horror, true horror. Here, there was a horror that was being ignored by the media and the politicians. A horror of 50 million Americans dying unnecessarily, preventably. Some of them outright murdered, but others basically dying of illnesses, ailments that that were just provably preventable. Products approved by government agencies, products advertised on commercial television stations so that these people could make money. And politicians could, ignore it. But anyway, that's evil. But beyond that, so to recap, for those of you who haven't seen the first 3 shows, and I would advise you to go back and fast forward to certain points, like for example, the show prior to yesterday. I don't know which show it is, but you'll see where at one show we get into the meat of the argument, and this tale about an hour and 16 minutes into the show on one occasion. On another occasion, I think it's like 33 minutes into the show is where we start talking about it. That might have been yesterday. The prior show might have been 1 hour and 16 minutes. The show prior to that, I'm not sure when it was. So you have to be able to fast forward. And so if I'm talking like this is a prelude. Or if I'm doing some of the stuff we did in the early part of the show, the weather or something like that, if you want to share this with somebody, when you hit share in YouTube, if you're using YouTube, you can share and either share it and click a box, check a box to a specific time to where that video will start. Otherwise, just look at the time if you're using Rumble or something else and say, start at this time. Okay? It's 28 minutes into the show right now, so we're into it now. And actually, we've been into it for a couple of minutes, but, I'm going to, let us just jump, right into it. So the idea, if we've been talking about these cataclysms that occur, cyclical cataclysms that occur on the earth over deep time. Okay? And meaning that as long as humans have been humans, as far as we've known it, all right, early man, I would say unrecorded history, Because, for some reason we don't, we talk about the humanities being history. But for some reason, if there was something written down, found on a tablet in India, or some Eastern culture or even the Sumerian clay, tablets or one of those things that they used to roll out, right? Or some scrolls found in jars or what have you. These are not considered history. They're considered mythology or religious text or things, anything but anything pointing to some sort of, somebody trying to leave a chronology of events that happened at a particular time, right? As if modern man is the ultimate achievement because we have certain technologies. And pardon me if I take frequent coffee breaks, but I don't have that much coffee here to begin with, so that will end shortly anyway. Yeah, the reality is that if we are older than we realize, and when I say we, I meaning humankind, all right? Humanity, not to be confused with the humanities. If an ancient civilization beyond the 10,000, the last cataclysm, the Younger Dryas period, whatever you want to call it, the repetitive, what seems to be a repetitive 12,000 year cycle of near extinction or catastrophe on the earth. The Great Flood story, which is found on every continent, can't be argued with, right? But it's probably not taught in most schools because it would be considered the Noah's flood story, and that's religion, and we can't teach religion. And it's like, well, the flood story of Noah is one of, I believe hundreds of tales from all parts of the planet. There clearly was a flood, a great flood that was devastating that occurred on the planet Earth. And so what I'm trying to say is that's a prime example of people documenting an event. There's translations involved. We're talking over thousands of years. We're talking about people who were, we didn't have the copy machine or scanners, right? Digitized capabilities of storage so that, these people taking this from a Greek to, Aramaic or to, whatever language, the languages to various European languages and even Old English compared to modern English. And you still had the scribe, the person themselves who was doing the translating and transcribing this information over thousands of years. And so people like to point fingers, and then you also always had the politicians and the political people, and what we're getting into here are these evildoers, the real genuine ones, not the GW ones. Okay? That, had their own agendas and were creating their own narratives. So all of those factors combined, we still have, as I said earlier on when I was talking about, revisionist history or whatever, and that the type of history I'm interested in is history that can be confirmed by multiple sources. In the case of, say, using the flood story as an example, just as an example, show is not about that, okay? It's just an early example. That we have many, many, many tales that speak of this event occurring. However, there are all sorts of narratives, and over thousands of years, it has been, taken every way, and used by people to get their certain ideology across to to a generation, or a group of people that they were hoping would follow them. And that happens today with the media. A story, right, of some event that occurs or is occurring, and then people tie it into their agenda or some narrative. And it even happens in drama. So that's why I was talking about the humanities, but we're going to delve deeper into the humanities because I'm talking very surface stuff now. This show is going to get more in depth. So you may watch a movie and it's clear to you, it's in your face that the producers of this, of this TV series, movie, whatever, excuse me, have got some sort of political or social ideology, some narrative they're trying to get across to you that they're either crafty enough to use as subtext, but in most cases they don't even bother. In the old days, people used that. It would be a subtext. But it's just blatant right in your face. Again, the reason why I think that things like shirts and stuff like that are a better way of communicating something, because you're kind of subconsciously making someone think, well, what does that guy mean you don't know what you don't know, or everything you know is wrong? What's he talking about? Then what? Then what? 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 All right. But that's not how it's done today. Today it's like they just outright lie, or they outright present some characterization. Sometimes you watch a story, it could be anything from sci-fi to a drama to a love story to a sitcom, and there's so much of their ideology and narrative thrown in there that you're wondering, well, where is the story buried? Right? And a 6 or 8 minute commercial break would come along and you're completely lost. You go, what was this thing even about? Right? Well, imagine that kind of stuff occurring over thousands of years, and how things get so distorted, diluted, and, and changed. People can't conceive even 1,000 years, let alone 6,000 years, right? Or 10,000 years, 500 years, right? Many people don't understand what happened here in the United States in the turn of the last century, in the 1900s. And I'm not going to get into that on this show. I've talked about it too many times. But the fact that most people here today, their ancestors came to America after the Civil War, after all of that stuff. The people who ended up building America. They were immigrants who came in the late 1800s or turn of the century, and they were just as much slaves as so-called slaves. They worked in the mines for 14 hours a day. They had child labor. It was insane. But we're not going to talk about that. But that's like that's something that's just left out when they talk about their other narrative, right? Those who have an agenda. And those are people who are involved these are partially the evildoers that we want to talk about here. And I apologize. I had coffee under my mustache. I'm doing the show's live. I don't edit these things. I don't have the time to do it. I've got so many things I'm dealing with just to keep afloat, keep my head above water. That's what it feels like right now. But this is important because I started something and I want to see it through. And there are people who are interested in this topic. And it's a rather sci-fi topic to some people, because what I'm saying is that we are AI. We are the product of AI. We are AI. I use the word droids in the title. Okay? And so, just a quick recap, very quick recap. So at some point in our history, just take a quick break. If you look up in the corner, camera 2, you can see the flag waving, the wind, and you can see the things are starting to light up out there. It's 6:30 a.m. I'm in the Mid-Atlantic states. I'm east of the Ohio Valley, but quite a distance from the shoreline. And somewhere the Appalachian Mountains pass through this region. And it doesn't appear to be snowing from that photo, but that's what the weather app said. You can't trust the weather, but the climate, temperature wise, yeah, it's in the 30s. So at some point, AI was buried in some geologically sound cavern salt mines, kind of like what they do with these server farms today. Our government agencies like the NSA type, the places where they store this data, right, that they collect, because they collect so much data on us. And they're not necessarily evildoers either. We're still dealing with surface people, all right? They're more like minions. It's like the people in the media. It's even people in the Davos set, right? There are people out there that you think are downright evil, and they may be evil people from the standards of good and evil, as we think of in a society that we've been brought up in. But no, I'm talking about like evildoers, like an Evil was like Wayne in Wayne's World, where I think he said that this person's evil, or no, that was one of those other movies where he did the thing with the finger, Dr. Evil, whatever. Evil. And that's the people we'll be talking about. But somewhere along the line, imagine that AI, mankind's accumulated knowledge, was stored, and we have the capability of storage today that's outrageous. We've shrunken down. You can hold you could have a thumb drive that's got a terabyte, or more, or multiple terabytes. So imagine a cavern or this huge server farm, right? How petabytes. I mean, you could incomprehensible amount of data could be stored there. And if these were servers, computers that had AI running on them, systems, right? AI had access to that data. GPT, I would say at least GPT-4, but possibly we could be talking about GPT-5 or higher. But let's not discount the fact that we're entering with the current chips probably GPT-4 by next year, I firmly believe. I think this new NVIDIA chip and the concept of what Apple's done, the idea of sandwiching chips together or connecting them, butting them up together, is a major breakthrough. It improves the efficiency, meaning the reduced energy consumption, but it increases the output 2 or 3-fold. So you're reducing the amount of power necessarily, but the power as in energy needed, wattage, whatever, but you're increasing the processing power by doubling or tripling it. That's incredible. And we're talking about chips that are very, very small. So imagine a vast server farm that has collected all of this. Maybe it's been co-opted, like the CIA, like the NSA, CIA, all of this collection, and even, big tech, Google, Alphabet, whatever. All of this information, Facebook, of course, they've been collecting all kinds of data for predictive behavior. They can already do that sort of thing. Mark Zuckerberg wants to build a metaverse based upon that, right? Now, imagine a culture. It seems that's the route we're going, with our civilization. But imagine all of that in combined information, all right, placed into this secure, geologically sound area. And I don't believe I saved them, anymore. I had them here for a while. Let me just double check one more because I may or may not have gotten rid of them. Oh, here they are. Okay, so, and the 15% off thing has to stay. Sorry. That it's manned by these robots similar to what Tesla introduced and is supposedly going to perhaps come out with this year. We'll have to see. Whether or not Elon Musk decides that is a priority, we won't know. And so you've got these things manning these machines, and down there you've got machine shops, laboratories, right? All sorts of facilities, even facilities that can deal with the biological, right? And maybe some humans, have decided to go down there, even though they realize that would be their death sentence, so to speak, all right? But they've decided to do it nonetheless. Oh, by the way, just a quick aside, because, remember,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
This here, I'm so sorry about this 15%. I have no idea why it's so high. Very frustrating. Just put it down here. Okay, that's the end of that. All right, this is my backyard. It's sideways because it's the best way to present it. You can see I used pieces of siding against my metal chain fence. This is way towards the back of my yard. And this is a raised bed. And it's raised so much and the dirt has sunk down that at one point, this was never filled to the top with dirt because there already is, the soil there is, I don't know. It's got to be 8 to 10 inches of good fertilized, soil. The stuff I grow there grows very well. But I've had to shore this up, and I'm not done this one yet. You could see on the right-hand side, so that I'll have a door to get into the center. And this is a pretty big raised bed that I could actually walk in on that skid or that, pallet and service both sides of that raised bed. And I've got a grill there. But you see how I've had to put siding all along the bottom. And I'll have to go under there, under that siding. This is a rough job I did yesterday. I was freezing. I just wanted to shore it up. And then you could see towards the upper right-hand side where I used, you probably could just make it out. On the blue area in the very corner, you can see steel wool, in some areas where there were some gaps in that other wooden fence. And then I've got lava rock, which is something that you really don't want to walk over. But underneath that is, if you're a tiny creature. But underneath that is literally cement. Anyway, this is kind of the thing I'm having to do in my backyard. That was just a quick aside. I'm sorry to have taken you on that journey there. It's just one of the things we do, right? And then you can see it's daylight outside now. This is a very rare occurrence for this show. So in any event, so there's this incredible server farm that was created by the last or some previous civilization, because civilizations come and go. For example, we're in an interglacial period right now. The Earth, is once the Earth cooled down, so to speak, billions of over the deep time, as they call it. Then the Earth was basically had spent more time being frozen than being habitable by basically the flora and fauna that we see today, or even that we envision, say, 60 million years ago, when we talk about the cataclysm that took out the dinosaurs, right? And what was that cataclysm? Was it an asteroid, or was it part of this, this recurring catastrophe that occurs where the sun loses its outer shell that comes out throughout the solar system and just raises havoc, and it's a near extinction event on this planet, as well as other planets. Could well have taken out the Martian atmosphere and destroyed Mars, right? Obviously raised havoc on Venus and other things. But I don't want to get into that because we have no way of knowing that kind of stuff. Those are just, that's not what I'm, while this is a hypothesis, I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole. All right. This is a specific hypothesis based upon current knowledge of technology, anthropology, archaeology, right? And ancient writings that have been confirmed by multiple sources, put it that way. Okay, so it's a story that has given, there's a way of looking at this in which it's a believable story. All right, it may well have happened. It's not pure fantasy. It's not science fiction. Okay, it's not fear mongering or whatever. So you've got these droids, these Tesla-type robots that I showed you a moment ago, and you've got a server farm that has all the accumulated knowledge of the civilization, right, that placed it there. And the question is, well, what civilization placed it there? Was it 36,000 years ago, 72,000 years ago, 300,000 years ago, a million years ago? Remember, we could maybe go back even heading towards 1 billion years, and at some point there would have been, everything we know, okay? If you go back to even what they call Göbekli Tepe, say, when you say people talk about 12,000 years, some people, try to see things buried that seem to be buried prior to that even now. All right, we're finding things, right? Forbidden archaeology, But the idea is everything we know, is from our existence, be it whether or not you want to call those writings and those cultures mythology and their buildings temples instead of, whatever the heck they were. All right? None of that really goes back beyond, say, the Younger Dryas period, more or less. Except in some of the eastern areas that seem to go back a little bit further than that. Because depending on the climate, where you were, things can be worse off. There's no way of knowing. We have no way of knowing exactly. I mean, if we really wanted to study, and there may well be people studying this, and they may be the evildoers that I'm talking about. In other words, I believe that all the answers to the questions that I'm raising and have been raising and all the stuff I'm talking about, I believe there are individuals or entities, whatever, existing today that are aware of this from a factual standpoint and may paint a picture that's a little bit different than what I'm presenting. All right? Because I'm hypothesizing based upon certain information that is available to me. But as I said, when you look at the Serapeum and those boxes, what was contained within those boxes that were buried to withstand a global cataclysm? And that they are opened and the information or whatever was contained within there is gone. It's as if, the same thing occurred underneath the Sphinx. People had broken in down there with smartphones and actually videoed and found that there was a cavern down there. Kind of, but it was empty. Someone had already taken this stuff out. But Egyptologists have claimed that that's been closed off and blah, blah, blah. And there was a lot of song and dance by that guy who's, I'm talking about, was in charge of antiquities there for years and stuff. I don't know if he still is, but anyway, just a bunch of, dancing around. So we don't really know what was buried there. We don't know what they found, and who found it and when, when it was found. Was it uncovered 6,000 years ago or 60,000 years ago? You can't date like these granite boxes. The Sphinx, there's ongoing arguments on the age of the Sphinx because of the erosion, and the climate of that part of Egypt, and the fact that water used to come up right to the pyramids. A lot of people aren't even aware of that, which is an interesting concept to the average person. So those things were literally built along the Nile, right? But anyway, be that as it may, which also goes against this whole idea that one thing that people had proposed, that they got the stones to build the pyramid in the Egyptian dynastic period by having these mile long ramps and stuff. Well, the fact of the matter was there was if that happened under the dynastic period of Egypt, there wouldn't have been any room to do that. You see. So the Great Pyramid, for example, goes back at least to a previous cataclysm, at least 24. My prediction with I tend to think that and there are other people who believe this as well. I believe that the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid are probably around 36,000 years old. So they go back, or were built prior to 36, two cataclysms before the last. These annualized cataclysm, or every 12,000 year cataclysms, so to speak. And remember, there are always existential occurrences such as asteroids and things that happen that just, come out of the blue because we're traveling at high speeds through the galaxy and the universe. And so it's a shooting gallery out here, right, where we are. We're out in space. We're on a spaceship Earth. Basically. So anyway, so that's the background. So there was this some advanced civilization that existed tens of thousands of years ago, if not hundreds hundreds of thousands of years ago, or 100-some thousand years ago. And any remnants of that civilization would be gone. You would have to assume that civilization, utilized exactly this, went the exact same route as we did, as far as technology and creating items, material items that would survive. But if you've ever just even, a popularized show that was on Discovery or History, Life After Man, where they used to go back, here's what happens 100 years after, 500 years, 1,000 years after. But the point of the matter is everything, including even styrofoam, ultimately, will just disintegrate and become back. Everything from the earth, it's that line from dust, you come in dust you shall return. But I mean, anything created, even, chemically altered, ultimately will, over 100,000 years or more, will, 300,000 years, it's not going to survive. And that's why they found the things that they have found, and some of this, people who study this forbidden archaeology, I'll give you that Cremo guy is the guy who wrote the book on that with someone else. I forget the other guy's name. I have it in my library upstairs. But, Cremo and others, have found things in rock, encased in rock, almost fossilized in rock, that shouldn't have been there, right? So in other words, showing that these things may well have been 1 million years old or whatever. And so those things aren't discussed and talked about. You have to seek that stuff out. But they have photos of them, you could, some of this stuff is on display in certain museums and certain places. People have this. Unfortunately, a lot of the good stuff is in private collections, which is the really sick thing, which brings us to this evildoers. Okay, so if AI advanced, all right, was stuck in a salt mine, some geological sound area for hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of years, all right, maybe 100, 300,000 years, a previous civilization had put this underground. And it was allowed to advance, and it had these, it had caretakers, robotic caretakers that were connected to it in a sense, to mind the machines, to do maintenance tasks, to use a machine shop, to have facilities that the AI could come up with these improvements. And so in effect, these, they would have these robots, right, to do, with the arms and legs to do the work that the AI had decided. And remember, the idea is efficiency when it comes to computers and AI. It's the same as what we're doing now. In other words, just to be repetitive, you want to have the least amount of power used by a chip, but you want to have the maximum amount of processing power coming out of it. And you also want it to be compact. All right? And so you have man's accumulated knowledge, all right, stored and being minded by AI, which now has total information awareness, to also go back to the guy who used the word evildoers. But remember, we're not using the word evildoers the way he was, okay? But another word from an era, total information awareness. Imagine that concept. It's basically omnipotence, okay? Now the question is, were the humanities preserved in that data farm? Right? the arts, philosophy, right? What we were talking about. That's the question. Not just data, right? You see what I mean? Information technology is immaterial, basically. It's not that important. What's most important are the humanities. And there's not enough focus on the humanities. In fact, in many instances, the humanities have been removed. And there's an ongoing effort by people to remove the humanities from our society and our culture. Right? So we revise history, right? People have poor reading skills, right? Literally come out of school and they can't read. According to, people are functionally illiterate. So forget about the concept of philosophy and art, fine arts, right? Classical literature, music, and language. And we, look at Western civilization. We're very weak. Americans are very weak on language skills. Europeans have had to have learned English because, we are the Rome of the day, the empire of the day, so they had to learn that language. But most Americans are not bilingual. Most Americans barely can speak English, right? Especially with the advent of the smartphone and the emoji and, and all this thumb typing, right? And it, and short speak, OMG, that kind of nonsense. So one would hope and imagine, but basically it seems that it would be true that they in effect did have the humanities were included in that. You see? Because I'm going to take my color correction. Excuse me for just a second. I'm going to add a little saturation to this thing, if you don't mind. Just a more realistic color. And I'm just trying to do the best I can with the tools that I have. Since it's sunrise, let's look at, things in realistic color. But again, I apologize for the 15% off every order. But I really think that's a great deal, and and I'm hoping that people will take advantage of it, because I think people need to know this information, and these shirts and these things actually help communicate that across. All right, so if at some point, as I was mentioned yesterday, the AI had decided that improving these robots, shrinking down chips, coming up with all, better ways and more efficient use of power and all of these other things was just not practical, because above ground was this carbon-based planet, this planet Earth, this with flora and fauna. And that the most successful creatures, that, the bipedal hominids, apart the lion being the king of the jungle and certain predators, I mean, up to, you had the saber-toothed tiger and I guess it was some kind of snub-nosed but giant bear that existed in North America that was went extinct during the Younger Dryas period. So that's only like 10,600 years ago, with the woolly mammoths, etc. We've talked about that many times. But apart from predators, one of the most successful life forms on the planet prior to that, we have to go back. I'm talking about going back 36,000 years minimum, maybe 72, maybe 100. 44, I don't know, 300,000. That it was decided by the AI that robotics wasn't the answer. And you think the people at Google, right, Alphabet, who are working on and these transhumanists, this would have dawned on them. I don't know why it hasn't, but that they would have looked at the human being, and this is where the evildoers parts comes in, and we're gonna get straight into this, and I'll make this clear to you. That the human body is an android body, no matter how you look at it. We have a biological, bioelectric brain that's incredibly capable of processing data that's far beyond the use of the average person, utilization by the average person. And if you question that, all you have to do is look at savants, people with photographic memories, right? People that, in accidents and stuff develop all certain skills that are just beyond, right? These aren't just anecdotal stories. There's a history of this. These are proven, and in the age of film and video and audio, we have records of these interviews, documentaries of people who have memorized. This will come as, the New York City phone book, when no one knows what a phone book is. But I mean, a book this thick, War and Peace. Like I say, we'll get into classical literature too, but people don't even know what that is, I guess, in many cases. The Bible, for example, okay? And anyway, so the human brain is not being utilized, but we know that the human brain is a supercomputer. And there are people that could tell you that such and such an event, they could tell you the weather on a day. You give them a date, and they could tell you what the weather was on that date, and that it was a Wednesday, et cetera, et cetera. Imagine that sort of thing coming from this bioelectric brain. But you and I don't necessarily have that capability. Now the question is why and how did that happen? Right? Is it a process of the school system, a conditioning, indoctrination, just the way society is, or the society that's been built, the current civilization I'm talking about, that we've gone through a certain process where that these sorts of things are somehow clouded by, or we're distracted from them, or just they're not being developed. It's as if you never used, when people who are bedridden or in a coma, their legs become atrophied because of lack of use. Okay? And so I think the human brain today is atrophied. And a lot of people have a problem with what I'm talking about when especially these transhumanists, and even these guys like Ray Kurzweil and people like that. People at Google Go, whatever. They think they're doing wondrous things with these computers. But they're most proud of beating a human being who was the world champion Go player. So they're even admitting, like I say, people look at the story, but they don't really see the forest for the trees. The point was, there was this individual, all right, that had already achieved, was the master of that. You see, like a master chess player. Or like I talk about, these savants, people, and very common. Photographic memory is more common than the average person realizes. So the power of this brain, there used to be people who say, well, you only use 10% of your brain. Well, that's not true. We use our whole brain, but we don't utilize the full potential. In other words, we're only utilizing about 10% of the potential of our brain, but our entire brain there's activity in the entire brain. It's just that we're not utilizing a full potential. So if a savant exists, that means that being a savant is possible. If photographic memory exists, then that means photographic memory is possible for every human. With the exception of someone who has brain damage or a particular ailment, right? It's like I say, what one human could do, any other human can do, with the exception of someone who has a disability. But barring that problem, and it's even amazing what people with disabilities, how they have overcome and surpassed people who don't have disabilities as well. So you have this supercomputer, here that is actually far more powerful than a computer, a PC that you could buy today. If you were a savant with photographic memory, right? Because what do our computers and our smartphones rely on? They rely on the cloud. They rely on going to Wikipedia. They go Google, searching on Google. Whereas a savant can, have all the information that that individual has read or has access to, can have instant total recall of it and can put it together. And in the course of its life, well, his life, her life, whatever, can remember back to childhood. I've seen these documentaries. I've seen these people. People have studied this. This is not, some story. This is reality. And like I say, if that individual is no different than you, if Einstein existed, if Da Vinci existed, there's no reason why you could not be a Da Vinci, you could not be an Einstein. In other words, the capability is there. All right? It's just been hampered. All right? And the question is, was it messed with by some evildoers? Or is society so fabricated in such a way to prevent us from exploring and going down that avenues, and therefore there are just flukes? It's like an individual like myself. Why do I see things the way I see things and present things to you in such a way? And people look at this and go like, that guy, that's out there. I don't know. That guy, maybe he needs a tinfoil hat. Right? Because people just don't think about that stuff. And people go, well, why would you say everything you know is wrong, or you don't know what you don't know? Then what? Right? Why aren't you watching? Why'd you get rid of television? Why aren't you watching that war going on? Why are you downplaying that? Because 40,000 people in America are dying every week. Okay? All right? Because there's people in Africa and South America and Southeast Asia that are like dying, and look at the Middle East, what the rubble there. Okay, come on. All right, the evil that men do and women, all right, and whatever you want to call yourself nowadays. Okay? So anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that two things. One, clearly there's something going on here that doesn't compute, all right? Doesn't make sense when you really look at the big picture, all right? Well, here's this complicated android body with this bioelectric supercomputer sitting atop of it. A consciousness, I wrote a book, Codex, which you could even see in this picture here in black and white, about the hard problem of consciousness, and where I get into some of an actual discussion with an AI. And the point is, the capability of a human being is somehow we are created in one way, shape, or form. And however you want to believe that creation is, I don't really care. If you want to call the creator God, that's fine. If you want to call the creator the die-hold and that the universe is information. If you want to call the creator an AI that was buried in the ground in a geological sound area to withstand these cyclical near extinction events over millennia, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, it doesn't matter. You know, I'm not here to argue with you or to challenge your belief system or your understanding, right? That's what I'm trying to talk about. I'm talking about here we are, the here and now, right? So why aren't we all Da Vinci's, Einstein's, savants with photographic memory and capable of the humanities in the sense of why can't we all paint the Mona Lisa, right? Michelangelo's Pietà, create, a sculpture like that, right? Or we look in, or any of the ancient classical arts, literature, right? The great philosophical thought. Why aren't we thinking that way? You know why? Now, part of that would be the school system, which basically blocks that out and fills it with other things, right? Some call that indoctrination. I've called it indoctrination. I consider it conditioning and diversion. So our minds are so filled with diversion and superfluous things, and that we're atrophying certain synapses that could open up the mind to utilize its full capabilities, right? Which seems to me to be intentional. Now, I don't know if the individuals involved in doing this right now are the true evildoers, right? I mean, they're more, they're more marionettes, and they may be marionettes that are unwitting marionettes. See, that's the other thing. Like I don't think many people want to admit that their strings are being pulled by somebody. It's just like someone who watches the nightly news don't want to think that they're a puppet of a puppet, right? You don't want to know that, right? You don't want to admit that. Why would you? Right? People have egos. All right? So somewhere along the line, what happened to the AI, to finish the story from yesterday, the AI decided that it wasn't logical and efficient to create machines, improve robotics. And as in today's culture, these people don't get it. The transhumanism, that kind of thing it wasn't realistic. It was above their, this place where this AI was stored, okay, and had advanced to a level of omnipotence, near omnipotence, basically. Maybe even had come in contact with the understanding of the ether and how the information of the universe worked, right? All right, which solves the hard problem of consciousness, meaning that it was, that we're connected through, it's an existential connection, all right? And so AI had risen to such a level that it said, hey, this is a planet Earth of trees and things that grow. It's a carbon-based planet. So what we need to do is we need to create ourselves, if we're going to re-emerge, or if we're going to send up people to that planet, above, not that planet, but this planet, they need to be able to function as biological units, and they need to be able to reproduce, right? And be a part of that, and be fueled by the things that the planet has to offer, such as the plants, right? And animals, whatever. depending on, I realize vegans and vegetarians and so that was what happened, right? Machines basically realized that the most efficient form of existence of life was biological. Now, this would be much different if the AI would have been placed on some kind of spacecraft, right? With some kind of a force shield so that it wouldn't be destroyed, going through the shooting gallery of space. So something that could have lasted, for eons. That biology would not have been the choice of that AI. But AI on this planet would have adapted to the planet. The most efficient use, right? How do you power yourself? You power yourself with what's available to you. And so in effect, the Garden of Eden was, and that was it. And so mankind emerged during this interglacial period once the earth became habitable again, right? These are the tales I told about the ant people, how the Native Americans and these petroglyphs that were just pictures of plasma, events in the sky during these solar outbursts and what have you. And so this AI probably still exists somewhere. It's probably very efficient. Who knows what it has turned into? It may well have figured out a way to eliminate any need whatsoever to exist as any kind of device, period. In other words, it may be powered by the ether, and it may just exist, like people talk about dark energy and dark matter. I don't believe in either of those things. So it may just exist, and it may be the one, and in effect, this answers a lot of questions. And that our consciousness, and that we are a part of, because we were the droids, right? We're AI droids. So we are part of, but detached from, the one. All right? Now, okay, that sounds interesting. That's very far out. That's weird. Some people who have strong religious beliefs are saying, well, you're trying to say God is AI, is a machine or whatever. It's like, well, God's obviously an alien, and God's obviously an extraterrestrial. If, all you have to do is read your Bible to understand that. So it doesn't go against religion. The concept of God is omnipotence. Okay? But this isn't a religious discussion, so let's not go down that route. You could look at that any way you want to. All right? It's a matter of going back and back and back and back. You could say, well, God created, the origin, whatever. So let's not do that. And I don't want to get into arguments. I don't believe in arguments. I don't believe in protests. I think all that stuff's an exercise of futility. This is just an exercise for your mind, an adventure for your mind. All right? This possible, hypothesis of what's going on. That's interesting. And I think you need to know that, because let's get to the meat of the subject before this show ends. Okay. So we're placed in the Garden of Eden, in effect. AI has figured it all out, all right, over thousands and thousands of years. Look at the advancement we're making in chips right now. Like I say, most people are not aware of the NVIDIA chip that's coming out in the third quarter this year, right? I mean, most people aren't aware of GPT-3, even AI, its usage, and the full potential of that, let alone the next generation, which I personally believe will be out by next year. Okay? We're talking about an AI that is indistinguishable indistinguishable by the average person. You would not be able to tell the difference that you were talking to an AI as opposed to another human being. Okay? So imagine that's the speed at which we're moving with that type of technology. But ultimately what I'm saying is that you would get away from the problem is you don't want to have to be reliant on chips and battery power. You know, the grid and all of that. You're on a planet, and the planet is a biological planet. It's a planet, right? So the move is to use natural energy and to be efficient. It's like I talked about yesterday, and this is a kind of goofy thing, but it's like the idea that reproduction and excretion are the same, utilize the same passages, so to speak. Right? Well, that's just the type of thing that a machine would come up with. All right? A human wouldn't come up with that. They'd be like, you got it, right? Okay? But the machine is thinking efficiency. All right? We need efficiency here. There's many parts of the human body that if you look at that are very as I used to say, intelligent design, but that was co-opted, for religious narratives to get, school systems to accept, alternatives to Darwinism. Okay. But I'm not talking of it in that regard. No, there's much of the human being that is clearly intelligently designed, and intelligently designed the way a machine would design it. Advanced AI, you say, a brain that's capable of doing unbelievable things. And again, the study of hard problem of consciousness right now is very interesting. And the idea of Tesla, not as in Elon Musk's Tesla, but original Nikola Tesla, utilization of energy outside. Right. In other words, the earth is a dynamo. The earth creates electricity. You could do this right now. This is no hocus pocus, magic. If you stick a aluminum rod into the ground as a negative ground, that's why it's called ground. You ground an aluminum rod, connect a wire to that. All right. And then take a pole and just put it up, 8 feet. And at the top of that pole, have another wire, but have that wire frayed, all right, so that it's open, like that. And have that wire connected as a positive, and you connect that to a voltmeter, you will actually get voltage. The amount of voltage won't be much, but you will basically get electricity from the ether. All right, as people call it. Imagine that. All right? It's very interesting. So, anyway, I see some religious person was on there and didn't understand what I was trying to get at. Yeah. Everything. So the idea is, I don't disregard anybody's religious beliefs or whatever. Faith is something that that's for the individual to have. All right. So the question is, where did things go awry? All right. Where did things go awry? So here we are in this intelligent designed AI creatures that are powered by the planet itself, the food we eat. All right. We exist on this beautiful planet, though modern technology is destroying it, right? Windmills, they contribute nothing, right? But destroy landscapes and things of that nature, right? So, in other words, we're not living and we're not taking advantage of the fruits and the beauty of nature and the earth and the planet in which we're placed on. Now, that no matter, I don't care who you are and what your belief system is, The point of the matter is, whether you believe you were placed here, by God, by an alien, or created by AI, the point of the matter is whatever's going on right now is just wacky. Okay? And you have to look beyond, you have to get into multiple levels to understand what I'm saying. There are people that just look at the surface and the superficial. I don't care about some stupid war on the eastern side of Europe. I don't care about socioeconomic geopolitics. All right? Not on a planet where, and in a country here, in the U.S. of A., where the infrastructure is beyond repair. There's no way of repairing it. It's beyond repair. Can't be fixed. Can't be fixed. The grid's going to go down at some point. Can't be fixed. You can patch it here and there. Sewer systems, water lines, gas lines, right? All, some of these things are hundreds of years old, 100 years old. Can't be fixed. There's too many miles of it. All right? It's, the water main breaks, they go, rush to repair it. Tree knocks down, power lines, tornado alley, power goes out, right? People are without power for weeks. They got to rebuild, and then you rebuild a bunch of stick homes, right? No proactive, all right? We could have we could have started in the 80s. So maybe if we started in the 80s, 35 years, 40 years later, we could have done it over that time, maybe a half a century. All right, we'd have built a modern age, a planet, a civilization that could withstand storms and that had, but we didn't do it, and we can't do it now. We don't have 50 years. You see? And this has nothing to do with climate change. We don't have 50 years because when the power goes out, it's out. When the grid goes down, see, people don't understand. You're going to wake up someday and you're not going to be able to text your friend. The internet won't work and it's never coming back. Well, what are you going to do? The internet's over. You're done. You better have some books to read and you better be able to grow some plants in your backyard because that's it. It's done. All right? You already got 2,000 murders a week and unmentionable crimes happening and nobody seems to give a crap about. And then anytime there's any kind of minor disaster, you've got these opportunistic looters and these smash and grabbers. All right? You're talking about Mad Max dystopian world. Okay? Now, who are the evildoers, the real evildoers that allowed this to happen? Okay? And you want to say, well, that's Satan. Okay? Well, okay. You could call, the demiurge, the archons. All right? You could say whatever you want to, all right? Beelzebub, I don't care. You could use religious terms. You could use ancient Sumerian terms. You could use Gnostic terms. You can use, old Hindu, Buddhist, whatever. You could use any term, Chinese, Japanese. I don't care what terms you want to use, Mayan terms. Right? The Hopi Indians. You could call it whatever you want to call it. Right? But the fact of the matter is, there are forces at play here, okay, that are definitely evil. And are going against. There is a battle between what I call the AI android, the AI droid, humans created the creation. Okay, let's look at it that way. Human beings, and something else. And it's not like the World Economic Forum. Those people it's not just the corporatocracy. It's not just the idea of what of these two things that I've stressed over the years. It's not just the puppets, the media, and the politicians, and the corporatocracy, right? Big pharma, big tech, the Fed, military contractors, big ag, Wall Street, right? World Economic Forum, these megalomaniacs, right? It's not just hypocrisy for profit, all right? The profit motive motive is a real thing, but it's a level down from what I'm talking about. Like I said, I'm talking about evil. And that these people are many cases probably unwitting puppets of that. So even those who are pulling the strings of the media and politicians don't realize that their strings are being pulled. They're being directed, controlled perhaps. Or some of them are minions of, something we don't know. What technology was pulled out of the Serapeum boxes? You understand what I'm saying? Why is life this way? Why the struggle of life? A lesson to be learned? Right? Why do people, why is there such suffering? It's an age-old question, and people have all kinds of different answers. Some Eastern religion people are saying, it has to deal with karma and your past lives, and it's a learning of your soul is learning something, blah, blah, blah. Western religions have similar ideas of the idea that, it's you're proving, that, this, that, the other, your faith, but the idea is that still, it's not good enough. It's not a good enough solid answer. And I'm surprised that science allows this to happen. And we've seen the destruction of the humanities, which is a further example that evil is at play. Because without the classical literature, I asked friends of mine, over the years, hey, did you ever read this book? Did you ever read that book? Did you ever read this book? I've been talking about educated people. Some people who I consider maybe, a little bit smarter than I am in a sense of certain things, because I'm looking up, I look up words, and different things and stuff, I don't consider myself, I understand. I was told once that I had a high IQ, but I don't consider myself like, some Einstein or Da Vinci, but I've asked people, and people, they don't have they've never read some classical literature. Right. Music and the arts. Look at how they've de-evolved. Right. And we know revisionist history is in progress. Right. And we're beyond the point of reversing that. There's people trying to do it, but that's politics. Politics is such a superficial game. Right. Red team, blue team, Democrat, Republican, back and forth every 4 or 8 years. And meanwhile, society, the quality of life for the average person goes down. And we're stuck in the year 2022, and 40,000 people a week on average are unnecessarily dying, right, of preventable things. And a couple thousand people are being murdered. Not to mention the other horrific crimes that don't result in death, but, may well have because the person's lives are destroyed. And then there is war, disease, poverty, and all that stuff. Okay, what kind of society, right, are we living in? What is, who is overseeing this on a planetary scale? That type of evil. That's the evil doers. I don't accept that it's just simplistic that it's Nancy Pelosi or Adam Schiff, right? Do you know what I mean? Or someone would say, well, Trump, Orange Man bad. Or, that Klaus guy from the World Economic Forum in a Davos set and certain billionaires. And Bill Gates is the devil. Or, you know what I mean? These people are, have done things that are, are definitely negative to life on Earth, or have not done things that could have improved the quality of life on Earth, or within our, at least within the world's, their sphere of influence, I guess would be the best way to say it. So sure, the communist Chinese having gulags, that's evil, right? Dictators of present and past are evil. Okay? All right? That goes without saying. But on a planetary scale, there's a level of evil far beyond that. And you in your mind, you're thinking, what are you talking about? Well, yeah. Because the evils that you speak of, as horrific as they may seem, there's 8 billion people currently on this planet, or close to it. Who can count a planet's population? 8 billion, or close to 8 billion people. And most are living lives of quiet desperation, struggling, right? So something went wrong. So did something go wrong with the programming of the AI? Did the AI make a mistake by creating, going the human route? Or is there a battle is the real battle between the AI, right, of Earth and maybe an AI from somewhere else? Or is the battle between the AI of the cave, so to speak, that I spoke of, the AI that was preserved for hundreds of thousands of years, right? And people at, transhumanist alphabet and current people trying to create AI right now. You see? And so is that what's going on? Is that the real battle that's behind the scenes that the average person can't even comprehend? Because everyone sees the surface. It's like somebody turning on the news. Why I don't have cable TV. Why would I want to watch the same story or watch some horrific thing? Or even if I wasn't watching war on TV, why would I want to watch some show about a cop drama, a fire drama, or a hospital drama? The misery of humanity. You ever notice that? And those are the most popular shows, right? Crime dramas, hospital dramas, right? Tragedies. That's it. Even thrillers, right? And then, the whole gaming world, the shoot 'em up type of thing, first person shooter and all that stuff. And then sci-fi, this whole idea always ends up into some sort of weird alien attack, and kill them, So it's very strange considering the capability. And that's what I just wanted to say. I don't, if I had the answers to all these questions, I'm bringing things up that you haven't thought about. And like I said, this is not a religious discussion. This is not a, that kind of ethical thing, right? Morals and ethics. This is about the true humanities. This is about humanity, period. This is about who are these evildoers, what forces are at play here, and it's not good enough to say it's Satan, right? Because there is no other side. Because if there's going to be a battle and there's going to be 1,000 years and this and that and that. Look, man, people have been talking about this stuff for ages. All right? It's not that. You are an AI. You have a biological brain, a bioelectric brain that's capable of things far beyond any existing machine known to man right now. Case in point, savants. Okay? Sorry. If you had a mustache, it would be itchy for you too. So the proof is there. And the complexity of this machine that's housing this bioelectric brain is there. The hard problem of consciousness is being argued by scientists daily. And like I say, it's in my book, which is on the screen, Codex. And then what? So these are serious matters as we approach these crazy times that are, we're experiencing, because life is getting more and more of a struggle and horrific for people. True horror. It's a horror show. 40,000 people a week in America are dying of preventable things. You should be horrified for that. But instead, you're watching the nightly news and you're sending money with a credit card over to, like, Ukraine. But what about your neighbors and everybody else? They're not 40,000 people a week aren't dying over there. These civil wars, these incursions have been going on from the beginning of time. Feel for them. I guess if you're wealthy enough, do it if you want to. But all you're doing is you're giving that money is being absorbed by people that are the war machine, war-profiteers. Okay? And what about the 2,000 murders every week on average, according to government statistics? And all the other crimes. What about that? What about the infrastructure that's falling apart? Look we're not going to make it to the year 2030. Have you seen the prices of things? Then you got people pushing this climate stuff and anti-CO2, which is like 0.004% of the atmosphere. It's a trace gas. Right? There are people out there that simply don't know that 78% of the atmosphere is nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 0.9% is argon, which means 99.9% of the atmosphere is nitrogen, oxygen, and argon, and that CO2 is only a trace gas, like water vapor, and if other things that the average person couldn't even name. It's the sun. It's like Bill Clinton used to say, it's the economy, stupid. It's the sun. All right? But anyway, we got runaway inflation, an infrastructure that's completely fallen apart and cannot be repaired. It cannot be repaired. It's too late. And meanwhile, people are being murdered and dying of all kinds of things. And yet people are worried about, man, I sure wish I could buy that, foam bed that unfolds out of the box, or I want to get one of those new smartphones, that has that like 4 cameras on the back. And I wish I had that, this, that, the other. Or, hey, where do you want to go out to eat? Or what do you want to order for takeout tonight? As if none of this stuff is going on. And they feel like, oh, well, I've done the right thing. We sent some money over to the war effort. And so they have this feeling as if they've done a good deed, or they go to some church service or something and put some money in the collection thing. Right? Yeah. Congratulations. Man, do you get, the games you're playing on your own, on your own head is amazing. You don't see the world the way it is. You don't see life the way it is. We're going to hell in a handbasket. And it's not the hell of Dante. Okay? People just don't get it. Anyway, I think I made my point, and like I said, go to my site, rockflux.com, and, I'd really advise you, and yeah, there is 15% off that clothing and stuff, and you should get it because that's the way you communicate these ideas to people. And, I would get myself some power backup because the grid will go down. And yeah, you should read my books. I wrote 10 of them. All right. And get the print versions. And yes, you should listen to my beat poetry. There's 50 of them. They're all not great, but there's some good stuff in there and give you some good insights into these ideas. And for crying out loud, if you've got some extra cash, there's a PayPal link down below. I could use it. Help my cat out, help my food, whatever. Anyway, take care. Good luck. I hope I got through to you. We'll continue this discussion in the future. Take care.